tonight on Reporting Scotland. The Chief Constable of Police Scotland resigns following months of controversy in the post. Calls for this Labour MP to consider his political future after making what he admitted were deeply offensive remarks. A widow who had to identify her husband's body in what she called a derelict shed welcomes moves to improve mortuary services.
We actually have a framework that will take us into the future, that will seek to ensure that there's dignity and respect for the deceased.
Also in the programme, the Scottish Government announces it will host a summit on tackling plastic pollution in our seas. And it's not Charlie Chaplin celebrating the life and work of Billy Ritchie, one of the first Scots movie stars in Hollywood. Good evening. Police Scotland is looking for its third Chief Constable in as many years after the resignation of Phil Gormley. Mr Gormley had been on special leave since September amid allegations of gross misconduct, which he denied. In a statement, he said it would be impossible to resume his duties in a meaningful way. The Scottish Government's handling of the affair has come in for criticism. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Rival Alderson.
It's just over 2 years ago that Phil Gormley became the second Chief Constable of Police Scotland. It's a job that pays £214,000 a year.
I do solemnly. Sincerely.
But for the past few months, Mr Gormley's been at home, doing nothing, accused of bullying behaviour. It's been a turbulent time for the Chief Constable and the National Force as the allegations, which he emphatically denies, have intensified. Appointed Chief Constable in January 2016, Mr Gormley was subject of a bullying allegation in July last year. He was allowed to remain at work even though the allegations, if proved, would have amounted to gross misconduct. Last September, when a second allegation was received, Mr Gormley was placed on special leave while an independent commissioner carried out an investigation. By last month, there were 5 investigations underway into Mr Gormley's conduct, and today the Chief Constable resigned. Mr Gormley has been a police officer for more than 30 years and before coming to Scotland was Chief Constable of Norfolk and Deputy Head of the National Crime Agency. Today he said it would be impossible to resume his duties in any meaningful way. He added, "I now need to prioritise the health and well-being of my family, on whom these events have taken a significant toll."
This has been a very difficult time for all concerned, but Phil Gormley has reached a decision to resign. That will take immediate effect, and therefore we'll be looking to the future. We'll be looking at putting in place arrangements for the appointment of a new Chief Constable.
There are now calls for a review of how the single force operates.
Well, I think 5 years on from the creation of a police force across all of Scotland, we need to look at policing, have a review of policing in Scotland. Why has it gone so wrong? I just don't believe it's about individuals. I think it's institutional that's caused so many problems to adapt in the centralised police force.
Meanwhile, the force says its focus, and that of all officers, remains on day-to-day policing. Rival Alderson, Reporting Scotland.
Well, in its short life, Police Scotland has never been far from controversy. Today, the Justice Secretary, Michael Matheson, said he hoped Mr Gormley's departure would allow the force to move forward. But opposition MSPs say questions remain. Here's our political correspondent, Glenn Campbell.
In his resignation statement, Phil Gormley said it would be impossible for him to resume command in a meaningful way. But why impossible?
Well, Mr Gormley suggests events since November 2017 concentrated his mind. That's when he tried to come back to work, but was prevented from doing so after the Justice Secretary here at Holyrood raised concerns.
Did you force him to resign?
No, the decision was one entirely for the Chief Constable to make, and he made that decision on his own.
Mr Gormley's lawyers revealed that on Tuesday, the 7th of November, the Scottish Police Authority unanimously agreed he could return to work as Chief Constable. The following day, Mr Gormley was informed of this decision in writing. On the Thursday, as he drove back to Scotland, the Scottish Police Authority's former chair, Andrew Flanagan, told him not to return, after what Mr Gormley's lawyers described as an unlawful intervention by the Justice Secretary. Mr Matheson insists he acted properly, challenging flawed decision-making. But his critics say it's too easy for government to interfere.
We need that root and branch review of the structure so we can disperse power throughout the country rather than it being hoarded by the Justice Secretary.
Calling Bravo 25, whiskey over.
Scotland had 20 local constabularies until the mid-1970s. Within a generation, the 8 regional forces that replaced them were merged into a single national service that's never been far from controversy. When officers took several days to respond to a crash on the M9, John Yule and his partner Lamara Bell died. There were political rows over stop and search and the routine arming of officers.
There was always a risk and a danger that moving to a single service, constabulary independence would be eroded, and certainly moving forward, what I would like to see and what the country deserves is a bit less politics and policing.
Police Scotland's first Chief Constable, Sir Stephen House, left post early, and now his successors done the same. Whoever replaces them has a hard task ahead. Glenn Campbell, reporting Scotland.
Well, let's go back to our Home Affairs correspondent, Reval Alderson. Reval, as we've just been hearing, the Scottish Government and the Justice Secretary have been criticised during this affair. Have they escaped unblemished?
I don't think they've escaped unblemished at all, Jackie. No, I mean, but what you have to bear in mind is that the creation of Police Scotland is one of the flagship policies of the SNP government. Therefore, it is there to be shot at by all of the opposition parties. And they have been doing that in various forms and with various degrees of success over the past 4 or 5 years. Now, what you have to look at when you consider the reorganisation, a massive reorganisation which was aimed at saving a considerable amount of money, it has delivered on certain of its promises. There have been teething problems. There have been problems which are more than teething problems. Are these all layable at the door of the Justice Secretary? Well, the opposition parties clearly think they are. For the government, they say that Phil Gormley was actually part of the process of laying down a new blueprint for Police Scotland until 2026, which will deliver further improvements and further benefits for the people of Scotland. That's what they're concentrating on, and the Deputy Chief Constable Ian Livingston, who is in acting charge of the force now, emphasises that. He says day-to-day policing will continue in the way that it has done, bringing down crime rates in Scotland and keeping people safe, in his view.
Reval Alderson, thank you. The Labour MP for Coatbridge, Hugh Gaffney, has apologised after making what he described as deeply offensive and unacceptable remarks at a Burns supper in Edinburgh. The comments were about the LGBT and Chinese communities. Well, our political correspondent Nick Eardley is at Westminster. Nick, can you tell us some more about this event and about reaction to it?
Well, Jackie, the comments came in a toast Mr Gaffney was delivering at a Burns supper in Edinburgh at the weekend. Now, in a statement this afternoon, he has admitted they were offensive, unacceptable and completely inappropriate. In response, the Labour Party has reprimanded him over the incident. But Mr Gaffney's comments come just over a week after a Labour councillor was suspended for allegedly making racist remarks. The Labour MSP, Anas Sarwar, was the one who initially raised concerns about racism in Scottish politics, and he has spoken to us in the last hour about the latest incident.
This is sadly yet another example of everyday racism. And if we accept that happens in wider society, then we've got to accept there'll be incidences in that Labour Party as well. And that's why I've published an 8-point plan on how we tackle everyday racism within the Labour Party. And I hope the Labour Party now takes that seriously and takes that forward, because I've had lots of words of solidarity, but actually it's deeds we need, not words.
Now, another person who has raised the issue of racism in Scottish politics is the SNP Minister Humza Yousaf. He said today that he thinks the Labour Party need to suspend Mr Gaffney and that he needs to consider his future as an MP. This afternoon we asked Labour's Shadow Scottish Secretary Leslie Laird if enough action was being taken.
The action has been taken. Hugh will be undertaking a programme of diversity training and awareness training, and we will be working with Hugh in the coming weeks to make sure that Hugh meets the standards that the Labour Party expects.
Mr Gaffney says he will undergo that training soon and will also seek to make amends with the Chinese and LGBT communities.
Nick Eardley there. A campaign by a widow who had to identify her husband's body in what she described as a derelict shed has led to new national standards for mortuaries. An expert review group set up by the government after Marianne White's experience at the Spiny Mortuary in Elgin has recommended that all post-mortem examinations in Scotland should come under the control of the NHS. Jackie O'Brien can tell us more.
69-year-old Frank White died in a sailing accident off Findhorn in 2016. His death led to the launch of a nationwide campaign started by his widow, following the distress of having to identify him in Spiny Mortuary, a facility in Elgin which is no longer in use.
It was utterly horrendous. I think the word I used then was it was desolation, to feel that that's where you had to leave somebody. They're a most awful building. It's not, unfortunately, been the only one across Scotland. That's what's also been shocking, to actually find that across Scotland we weren't the only people going through such experiences.
An investigation into the state of Scotland's mortuaries followed, and a report is recommending a new set of standards, improved viewing facilities for relatives, and that all post-mortem examinations come under the control of the NHS.
There wasn't that clear structure in place, and that's why there's a clear recommendation that through this, if they're all under the control of NHS boards, that there will be a clarity of structure about who's responsible, who's in charge, and what entity is in charge of driving forward and maintaining the standards of post-mortem facilities across the country.
All of Murray's mortuary services are now based at Dr Gray's Hospital in Elgin, following the family's plight.
It should never have had to got to this point. The responsibility should have been taken by the local authority, the NHS, the police, the universities, all those that are involved in the provision of mortuaries across the country. It shouldn't have taken a grieving family to have to come forward and begin a campaign to make change for the country.
The White family have vowed to continue their campaign until the improvements are implemented to protect the dignity of both the deceased and the bereaved. Jackie O'Brien reporting Scotland, Murray.
A plumber who wrongly installed a boiler at an elderly couple's home, resulting in a gas explosion, has been fined. Craig Hall failed to solder a joint and it subsequently came loose at Robin and Marion Cunningham's home in Callander in 2013. The house was destroyed by the explosion. The couple survived but suffered burns. The plumber was fined £3,000 after the sheriff accepted it was not an intentional offence. Two skiers who were missing in the Cairngorms last night have been found safe and well. An air and land search for the pair resumed just after 6 this morning with 3 mountain rescue teams involved. They dug a snow hole and sheltered there overnight, raising the alarm by sending a text to their family. The skiers were airlifted off the hillside by the Inverness Coast Guard search and rescue helicopter. It's not often a TV programme changes the way we behave, but the recent Blue Planet documentary series has focused many of us on the amount of plastic we use and its effect on the environment. Well, now the Scottish Government has announced it's to host a summit on tackling pollution in our seas. There have already been successes at local levels, as our environment correspondent Kevin Keane reports.
Where better to begin a campaign against marine plastic than at sea? These are the pupils of Sunnyside Primary in Glasgow, whose mission is to persuade Scotland to ditch the plastic straw.
Hi, do you have any straws? We only have paper ones. Would you like some?
They've convinced communities, businesses and even this ferry operator of their cause. Today they're taking their campaign to the Isle of Arran.
Well, we're trying to educate the public to stop using plastic because animals can eat plastic. It wouldn't just be plastic straws, it would be like plastic bags and plastic bottles as well. We're trying to save our world and try and make it a better place.
At Holyrood, they've already made the change by ditching plastic straws in cafes and bars. Today, the debate went to the heart of the Parliament.
To speak.
Although much is planned, the Environment Secretary admitted it can be slow.
Legislation might work, but whether we like it or not, legislation takes time. And the Nay Straw at All campaign is leading the way, working faster than we could, showing what can be achieved when an idea's time has come and people get behind it.
All parties demonstrated support for action on plastic, but the Greens felt describing it as litter was misleading.
The plastic problem is not simply a matter of picking up waste,
and keeping things tidy. Viewing plastic debris simply as litter is even supported by the plastics industry itself. It's more accurate for us to describe this plastic as pollution.
Encouraging behaviour change.
The Tories wanted the debate widening, with a call for a ban on building any more waste incinerators.
It would be incongruous to then see Scotland be the ashtray of Europe.
They have to share the ocean with plastic.
This is a debate which stems from a single TV programme. The Scottish Government will host a debate on marine plastics in Oban in June, but attitudes are changing fast, and much could happen before then. Kevin Keane reporting Scotland.
It's 17 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. Police Scotland is looking for its third Chief Constable in as many years after the resignation of Phil Gormley. And still to come, Super bowled over the artist from Perthshire whose painting took centre stage at one of the world's biggest sporting events. Children living with a long-term physical illness are twice as likely to suffer from mental health problems. Well, today a project was launched to help them deal with these difficulties before they begin. Suzanne Allen has been finding out some more.
What does a good mental health day look like?
Dealing with worries before they become too big. The young people here all have long-term conditions like arthritis or diabetes. This project is helping them recognise the difference between normal day-to-day stress and a potential mental health problem.
I'm the same. I'm feeling rubbish today too. Yeah.
Rachel's arthritis left her feeling isolated.
I at first found it very hard, and it made me quite upset that I couldn't do things that other people my age could do. But the older I got, the more I came to accept that there are some things I can do and some things I can't. And I'm working back to getting to the stage where I can do things my friends are doing.
Some young people, like Ainsley, who has diabetes, cope fine. Her advice for others is to be open and talk about their worries.
I did feel as if I kind of coped okay, but I know so many people that have had a much worse experience than me, and it really affects who you become as a person. It can limit people in the sense that they don't feel as if they have an opportunity to do what they want to do in their life.
Figures from the Mental Health Foundation show that children with a long-term physical illness are twice as likely to suffer from a mental health problem. In the UK, 1 in 4 of us will have experienced it.
More young people struggling with their mental health, particularly at that level that wouldn't necessarily mean that they have to go and access specialist psychological support, but that kind of level below that, if you like, where they're just struggling a little bit with the day-to-day pressures of life.
The UCAN initiative is now being offered to schools and youth groups across Scotland. Suzanne Allen reporting Scotland.
The work of a Scottish-based artist got an unexpected showing to more than 100 million viewers after one of his paintings took centre stage at the US Super Bowl's halftime show. Martin Ridley's picture of a stag was printed on a shirt worn by Justin Timberlake as he entertained a global audience. Joanne Macaulay reports.
The tranquility of the Perthshire hills is the inspiration for wildlife artist Martin Ridley, who observes the animals and birds and captures them on canvas. But little did he realise this peaceful scene would end up here. On Justin Timberlake's shirt, designed by Stella McCartney. It's estimated 100 million people saw it at the halftime performance at the Super Bowl. And it's all come as a big surprise to the artist, who had no idea the pictures he was sending to Stella McCartney were destined for the Super Bowl performance.
I've been working with a Stella McCartney team, supplying various possible images for them to work with, but I didn't know that it was going to go so big. So I'd been out on the mountains actually on the day the news broke.
Justin Timberlake's choice of outfit featuring the Ben Halton Stags chimes with the title of his new album, Man of the Woods. The actual picture caused a bit of confusion though, with some commentators describing the animal as a moose, an elk or even a horse. Much to the artist's amusement, he hopes there will be spin-offs from this unexpected moment of fame.
I like to think of my work would be a good advert for Scottish tourism or something. A lot of my paintings depict the finest of Scottish landscape and atmospheric landscapes, and what we've got to attract people to this country.
Away from all the fuss about the shirt, Martin was back in his beloved Perthshire hills today. So who knows who'll be sporting one of his designs on their shirt next. Joanne Macaulay reporting, Scotland, Perthshire.
Well, staying with events across the pond, he was one of the first Scots in Hollywood, the star of more than 70 silent films. But Glasgow-born Billy Ritchie has been largely forgotten until now. The actor is one of a number being celebrated at the Hippodrome Silent Film Festival in Bo'ness, from where our arts correspondent Pauline McLean reports.
He may look familiar, but this isn't Charlie Chaplin. It's Scots actor Billy Ritchie. The tragic tramp persona was one he first developed in Scotland for the music hall stage, where he worked with his mother and sisters.
He's 10 years older than Chaplin. He always claimed that his look, his makeup, he developed before Chaplin was even on the stage, as it were. The reason he's seen as a Chaplin impersonator is that Chaplin got onto the films before him. He got onto the screen before him, and so to some extent anything that came afterwards that looked a bit like him would be tarred with the brush of being an impersonator.
In fact, the persona was so popular, almost every studio had at least one. And Billy Ritchie was one of the most prolific of those early pioneers. This film, made in 1916, one of more than 70 made in just 6 years, paving the way for other Scots actors in Hollywood.
And it's interesting to what extent some people made a big thing about their Scottishness, and it's also interesting to me in the silent era that there were Scottish actors that played very Scottish parts, wearing kilts and so forth, and looking somehow Scottish, but of course there was no speech, so you couldn't hear the accent, but still made a badge about being Scottish.
Billy Ritchie died in 1921, aged just 43, as the silent movie era drew to a close. And that's why Scotland's only festival dedicated to silent film believes it's time to remember him.
So he was a star that people would recognise, and it's sad that he was completely forgotten. So the chance to be able to resurrect his career a little bit and bring it to people's attention is a great one.
Pauline McLean reporting, Scotland, Bo'ness.
Christopher has just asked me if I used to go and see Billy Ritchie's films. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Jackie. I think I'm in trouble now. It was a beautiful start to the day for many of us. Some lovely blue skies around us, captured by our weather watchers. But if we take a look at the satellite picture, you can see this weather front streaming in off the Atlantic, replacing those blue skies with grey skies. Fairly leaden skies, and staying that way through the course of this evening and overnight. There'll be some patchy outbreaks of rain with it, but actually much less cold than last night. So here's the chart, and there's the cloud moving its way steadily east and southeastwards. Some patchy light rain at times through the early hours, perhaps the odd flake of snow over the highest hills and mountains. And yes, it's a chilly night, 2 or 3 Celsius, but nowhere near as cold as last night. So to start the day tomorrow, fairly cloudy for many of us. A rash of showers towards the west and northwest, mainly of rain. There'll be some sunshine at times too, certainly up towards parts of the northeast, through the north of Aberdeenshire and towards Murray, Caithness and the eastern side of Orkney and Shetland. But some showers coming in here from the west, and most of the rain showers will be across western parts. A few across parts of the Central Highlands, falling as snow over the hills. Eastern areas seeing some of that cloud thin and break through the day, so it should brighten up slowly. Similar to in the west, helped by that moderate to fresh west-southwesterly wind, and a much milder day tomorrow. Then tomorrow night, well, the system clears away and we see these cold northwesterly winds driving in, cold air once again. So on Friday it will feel much cooler. There'll be a number of showers in the west. These will be of snow, quite heavy at times, but in central and sort of eastern parts, dry and bright, sunshine. Again, though, it will be cooler. And then it gets interesting as we go through towards the weekend. Saturday, this weather system pushing through, giving a wet and windy spell by day on Saturday. Overnight, another system likely to develop, potentially giving some very high winds overnight Saturday to Sunday. So to sum up the weekend, Saturday, wet and windy, yes, by day and by night. Sunday, a return to something colder with a number of wintry showers. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. Now a reminder of tonight's main news. Police Scotland's Chief Constable Phil Gormley has resigned. Mr Gormley had been on special leave since September amid allegations of gross misconduct, which he denied. And that's Reporting Scotland. Christopher and I will be back at 10:30 after I've had a word. Until now, from all the team, good evening.